Please welcome a very special guest, Roger Christian, filmmaker, director, artist, set director, set decorator. He's done everything, writing, currently reading his book, Cinema Alchemist. I just watched his short film. That's awesome, Black Angel from 1980. He's worked on Star Wars, Alien, many more, your favorites.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Want to start off exactly where did you grow up?
Originally in England, I was born in a place called Croydon, just outside London, and then went to London when I was a teenager. And most of my life was there until the recession was so bad and there was nothing in England. So I went to Los Angeles. I had a chance to go and lived there for quite a few years. And then I think earthquakes, several earthquakes where houses were dropping, 9/11, the riots where we were under curfew and everything. I had enough, so I went back to England, and then I ended up here in Canada, which is kind of midway, and it's a more healthy place to live.
Yeah, I've heard it's really friendly there too, and the people are really
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. How old were you when you first found a love for film and when you wanted to first get into filmmaking?
I was like many directors, I hated school. Seems a common denominator. And I kind of got out and went to a tech college, which was an art college, and did all my exams there in a year. I got everything in a year because I was treating like a human being. And from that one year, got into Maidenhead School of Art, which was in England. And my mate had bought a Mark 7 Jaguar for about £50. They were huge, beautiful cars. They were so cheap, no one wanted them. And he and I and two girlfriends went to London to watch. We went to see two films. One was Dr. Zhivago, and it was in the big cinema in Leicester Square. And it was the first time I'd been. And it's a strange, I know. I had an out of body experience when I was very young and came back into my body and thought, oh, okay, this is all right. I had a second one watching Dr. Zhivago with the music rising and this huge epic love story that took in the Russian Revolution. And I came out and thought, this is what I got to do, knowing nothing about it. And then we watched Claude Lelouch's Man and a Woman, which was like a first time really done through music and sound. Louis Trintignant in a Mustang driving from the south of France to Paris and a love affair. It was just an amazing film. Huge debates afterwards. People said, no, it's like a TV commercial and all this stuff. But it kind of excited me. And blow me during that time, the only way to survive, because my father would have none of it, and I had no support financially, I was putting up marquees in the south of England. They employed students, and this was 7 days a week from 6:30, 7 in the morning till 10 at night. We earned a lot of money, but it was grueling. I was putting up a marquee one day and saw a prison camp, and I went over there and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Oh, it's a film set." And I said, "What do you mean? It looks real." And they said, "Yeah, we know. There's an old hobo comes here every day and gives us food. He thinks we're prisoners." And so I questioned them and said, "What is this?" And they said, "It's Pinewood Studios. They're just through the woods at the back." Well, I got straight away. I burrowed under the fence because I couldn't get in there. They were shooting James Bond, and the doors were open. I could see the lights and the smell and this and that. And it opened this world to me that I suddenly saw, oh, it's real. This is what you do. And then I went in the prop room and there were all these gold bars everywhere. And I picked them up and they were plaster inside. And I thought, wow, this is what you do. It's all an illusion. I got to get in here. So it took me a few years. I was the only person to help me was one producer who wrote and said, you should do architecture because as you've got your kind of degree in art, get in through architecture. I don't know how, but I got into Oxford School of Architecture for the next summer and did 2 years there, and then decided that was it. That was enough. I had to go and find a way and get a job. Um, and I got a link somehow to a man called Charlie Bishop, who'd answered one of my letters. I went to see him. He was doing a famous TV series called Department S. And he looked at my work and he said, listen, I'd take you on, but I'm just finishing the series, but I'm going to make you an appointment for this Thursday. Can you go to Shepperton? And I said, yes, of course. I arrived there. It was John Box. John Box designed Lawrence of Arabia, uh, Dr. Zhivago, and he was about to make Oliver. And he looked at my work and he said, I'll take you on, but would you be prepared to make the tea? And I said, yeah, of course. I'll do anything. He took me on and he gave me the best words of advice that I think I've carried to this day, because he closed my folder, which was full of all my architecture and drawings and all that. And he said, listen, you're standing in the desert. You got a bottle of green ink in your pocket. There's an aeroplane next to you. There's a cloud of dust. The director and producer arrive. They go, this is fantastic. Can you have the aeroplane red by tomorrow morning? And you do it, or you talk your way out of it with an alternative on the spot. And that is the film industry in a nutshell. That's how
That's
I started.
incredible.
So yeah, and he mentored me because I came in from art school. I had hair down to my shoulders. I had Cuban boots, jeans. It was the 60s and 70s. I mean, and I was watching every European and Japanese movie in London. We had 12 art cinemas. I would go almost ruthlessly to see anything I could. I entered a world of suits and ties, being told, get a haircut. You want to get on this industry, shape up. Come on. I wasn't allowed out of the office. I wanted to see what John Box, the canal sets on Oliver. If you ever watch Oliver, the musical that he did, the canal sets, you will see there's Star Wars in there. The aging and the incredible kind of period atmosphere that he created. So, yeah, and I would be threatened if I go out and look. They'd say, get back, or you're going to get fired if you come out of the art department again. So I think it started my career.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love how, yeah, you've just worked hard and done everything that you wanted. You chased it. That's
Yeah,
very cool.
well, the last line in the book, you'll get to it.
Yeah.
It says, don't let anyone tell you you can't, you can. And I wrote that on purpose because, we'll get into Star Wars in a minute, but I just persevered doggedly once the light bulb went off. I mean, this is the hero's journey, and I was lucky I found it. And I found it by some strange destiny, however we find what we're going to do. If you're open to it, you recognize the symbols that are there, then you follow it. And I did. And I thought, well, and I knew no one in the film industry, nothing. I came from a small town where there wasn't even a theater. But, who knows where this comes from? Um, and that dogged determination is the only thing that's got me through, because times as a freelance film director and not dealing with Hollywood, which I didn't want to deal with, having done one movie, it's very tough.
And how did you find it when the experience when you did your first film? Did that just cement it for you and you went, this is what I want to do forever? This was that you knew
No,
that.
what no, what happened was I worked my way up through early on. I was doing the visual art directing on movies and stuff, and I worked my way up pretty quickly. By chance, I ended up working with John Barry, and we made Star Wars, and then Alien, that was going right at the end of Star Wars, and Life of Brian, the Monty Python's film. Well, at the end of that, I thought, you know what? If I don't stop now, I never will, because I was offered Conan to design, and which I would have loved to have done. So I thought the only way to break this, I'll sign up for the British Film School. So I went to Beaconsfield, started off there and meeting people. And the good thing was I could do editing, lighting, acting courses, all of this stuff. And obviously it was a little frustrating because I came from this industry and nobody understood it but me. But I decided then, okay, I've got to make a film. You can't keep talking. You've got to do it. So I thought, okay, what's my passion? It's King Arthur, the relationship. That's why I understood Star Wars so well. I understood mythology. I'd studied it, and it had got me through childhood, basically reading adventure stories like that. So I thought I'd better try to do that. And I was highly influenced by Kurosawa. He was my mentor, he was my favorite director. And I realized if I went to Scotland, I could do what he did with Mount Fuji, where he used it as part of the drama. Scotland, I'd never seen on film before. This mystical country at the right time of year is just extraordinary. And so I wrote this film, Black Angel, and I knew I wouldn't have much budget, and I couldn't even do it with a film school budget. It was
Mm.
I cobbled it together. How much could I have? And I didn't have enough. So I kind of did it almost influenced by Tarkovsky, who was another of my favorite directors, and who made his films to connect to the subconscious. And of course, that's what Star Wars did.
Yeah.
And it was again pure chance. I was at the sound mixing with Ridley when he was doing the sound on Alien, and Bill Rowe at the time was the #1 in the world. He was extraordinary, and I knew him well from being in the studio so much. So I was sitting watching, learning, and the head of Fox asked me what I was doing, and I said I've written the short film, and he said give it to me, which meant by some telex. There was nothing, there's no emails or cell phones, nothing in those days. And then he called me the next morning and said, listen, George was so upset with a film that we put to go out with Star Wars, because in those days there was the feature and a short film, which you actually had in Australia the same. He said, there's an Edie Fund, which was a British grant of £25,000 for a filmmaker to go and make a film. The only qualification was that a producer said he would attach it to a cinema release. So George said, go and make one. I'll attach whatever we choose to Empire Strikes Back. And so he sent it to George. I had nothing to do with this. This was not from the relationship, nothing. And it came back 2 days later and said, let Roger go and do it. And they gave me all the short ends off Empire Strikes Back, the bits of film left over. And with a crew of 9 and a lot of kind of determination, I got it made right before winter struck, when the skies are just amazing. And that's how that came about. It's interesting connection to Australia here, because when I made my first feature film, The Sender, which I went through hell, and it got, even though I got amazing reviews and everything, and it's become a cult classic, with Quentin Tarantino's favorite film of '84 when it was released, Guillermo del Toro, I'd met through it. My film was in the Avoriaz Film Festival. George Miller was the head of the jury, and they showed his uncut version of Mad Max there, the first one, which was the director's version. And after the screening of The Sender, and I was reeling from everybody slamming me down in Hollywood and everything, but getting great reviews. George Miller said, I want you to come on the radio with me tonight. I'm doing a program. And I did. We became friends. He supported it. And then one day he said, I'm glad that you understood Joseph Campbell. And I said, who's Joseph Campbell? He escaped me. And I happened to be in Australia a year later, and I had lunch with him, and he gave me a copy of Hero with a Thousand Faces. And I want you to read this. You'll understand what you did.
That's cool. But
Yeah.
going back to the scenery, that was the most beautiful scenery in Black Angel too, with the waterfalls. Everything about that was just incredible.
It was stunning, you know, and I had enough footage sometimes to do one shot. I would just go between locations, do the dialogue and the acting that I needed to kind of form the story.
Yeah.
And because I only had one Volkswagen that we put everything in and drove around, and one car for the grip stuff, I could go where most film crews couldn't go. I was in amazing places that I'd found. And using all this experience of being an art director, I knew how to get the next location over was going to be better than the other one.
Yeah.
It's had a very interesting history, Black Angel, because um, the negative got lost. George had a copy, his was lost. I had a copy of a print, but when I was making Nostradamus in Romania, the commercials company where I was with went bankrupt and everything got binned. So my print got binned. And I kept getting a lot of kind of messages saying, we want to see this film again. A lot of people in the industry said, we remember it from when it went out with Empire Strikes Back. I got a phone call from Universal Studios one day saying, "Were you Roger Christian? Did you make a film Black Angel? And where did you make? How did you make it?" And I said, it was my own company, Private Painted Lady." And they said, "We got your negative here." And this was about 12, 13 years ago. And below me, a few months later, Wired magazine had contacted me and done an article. They called them Forgotten Relics. And they said, "Look, your little film, we know it completely influenced John Borman when he made Excalibur." And that was true. He showed it to the entire crew before he started, telling them that's what he wanted. I was so embarrassed. I mean, I said, "John, I've made this with no money. You've got a huge crew." And it influenced Highlander that Russell Mulcahy had done.
Yeah.
And the Wired magazine had got read by two restorers in San Francisco who restored one of the Star Wars movies, and they were very high end. They called me and said, "We've read about your film. We want to restore it for you." And I said, "Well, I can't afford it at the moment because I'm in between." And they said, "No, no, it's a gift." They restored it, the
Wow.
negative, completely. It was shown in Mill Valley. It's a long story, sorry, but it was shown
No,
in
it's cool.
Mill Valley Film Festival. That's the first time it'd ever been shown in America, actually. And a kid came over from one of the islands. It was in Glasgow. He said he'd seen the film when he was 5 years old. His dad took him to see Empire Strikes Back, and it had gone in his head, and he didn't know if it was real. And he's read somewhere and said, "I've worked out it's your film. I have to come to see it because it's plaguing me all these years." He
Ooh.
turned up. Yeah, he turned up with an offer. He said, "If you'll come, the Glasgow Film Festival want to show it. And then I'll drive you around 4 cinemas in Scotland because they really felt I owe them. They own me because the second short film I made won an Academy Award that I made in Edinburgh." And so I said, "Okay, let's do it." And when I showed it in Glasgow, we did a Q&A. A woman stood up and said, "I have to speak to you." And I said, "Yeah, well, interesting." And she said, "I was the original producer of Game of Thrones." She said, "We made that in Scotland. Did you know that?" And I said, "No, I don't think anyone knows that." She said, "The pilot was made here. Your film was a great influence because we were in some of the same locations, everything. What happened was Ireland came along and said, 'Listen, we're going to give you tax credits. We've got huge studios, which Scotland didn't have,' and they lost it." So that story has gone on now because I it I was in pitching a film with a UK company, and the creative director came to me and said, "Roger, forget the film you're trying to do. We want to do fantasy with you. Do this. What is this Black Angel film that's gone viral on the internet?" Because from Glasgow, the BBC Online article got 500,000 hits in a week. It just went viral. So they said, we want to do the feature of it. Well, I started writing it and I got a producer on board and we started. And then I realized that Game of Thrones now own that world, that misty winter world. And I thought, well, if I do the same thing again, I'm going to look like I copied them.
Yeah.
And then I thought the idea of it came from a Holy Land kind of thing. It was a book that I'd read where he'd come back from. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do what we did on the first Star Wars with no money. And I'll go back to Morocco this time, which I know well. And I set the Black Angel feature in the hot desert lands. So it's different. And that I finally now, last week, got notice the financing is now going to be finally committed to, and it's been like 7, 8 years, but now we finally got it. So I'm waiting now for a start date, and I'm going off to shoot that in Morocco.
Wow, that's awesome. What a journey that's been for that film.
Well, yeah, long journey.
So cool. I love that. That's yeah, what a story. I'm so happy that you got financing too for it now, and it's just that you've had that influence, on other people is incredible. Like you said, Tarantino loved your film Sender. You've touched so many people as well. It's
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah, it's always been a because I've tried to stay independent and tried to do this kind of way of making films. So, with the Black Angel sequence, I know now how making these films, how we made Nostradamus. It was a $4 million budget and it was a $20 million film, and Star Wars was we had no money to make Star Wars. I'm using all of that experience to make a film for a budget, but it'll look 4 times, 5 times it's it's what the budget that I'm given, which is pretty tight. But and I've seen enough CGI movies and everything. I've gone back to real basics with it.
Yeah.
I want it. It's in stunning locations and sets that I've got down there, but I'm trying to make something that's a little bit more engaging.
Yeah. Well, how did you first come to work on Star Wars?
That was because I was asked to go out and help on a film called Lucky Lady in Mexico. John Barry was the designer, and Les Dilly, who I worked a lot in tandem with as art directors on quite a few movies. And that movie, Lucky Lady, was written by Gloria Willard Hike, who wrote American Graffiti and wrote some of Star Wars for George. And it was pure serendipity when no one would finance Star Wars. And then Alan Ladd kind of went against his board and said they would do it. So the board estimated Star Wars would make $12 million. They cut that in three and said to George, if you can make it for four, you can make your movie. So same kind of blind determination. Gloria Willard said, you've got to come and meet Roger and John Barry because they're doing what you want. They're doing old Western sets. They're turning them into running sets and stuff. And at the same time, the budget that Gary Kurtz had done, he couldn't get it below 8 in America, and there were no studios free. And Fox in London, the exchange rate meant that we were half the price exactly. So the head of Fox in London said, we can do it for 4. Just come here. We've got stages completely free. And so George came down and met, and it described to me his spaghetti western in space, and I kind of was truthful and said that I've never connected to a science fiction film. I'm an avid science fiction reader, but they're all over designed, they're clean, they don't work. And I said, I think it should be old and dirty and dripping oil and, repaired by the owner. And see, I only knew when John and I were hired on the spot, I only knew when I got to England in August and read the script that I described the Millennium Falcon exactly.
Wow. That was like iconic growing up. That was my favorite ship, Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. And so, we there was no money. Fox wouldn't finance it. We were paid by George, John Barry, myself, and Les Dilly. So we set up in a tiny studio in London, um, to kind of work out if we could make R2D2, because as the two storytelling leads in the film, without C3PO and R2D2, there wasn't a film. We had to work out then, can we do it? Otherwise, we couldn't go ahead. Um, um, we had no money, so I got Monty Python's carpenter, who did some of their sets for them. They really had no money. They couldn't even afford horses on Holy Grail. They used coconut shells. That's why they did it. The horses are expensive.
Yeah.
The carpenter had some wood at home because there wasn't any. There was no one. That Robert Watts was in trouble. Said, "I haven't got any money. Fox aren't giving us anything." So we used stuff from his garage, and I found a lamp top in a junk pile, which fitted the top, and we made R2D2 like that. And they cast Kenny Baker. We worked out if they could make the Daleks work from Doctor Who with somebody inside, we could do it with R2D2 with a very small person. And Kenny Baker fitted the bill, and we eventually got him to walk. It was another process of real endurance to get him to do it, but we did it. And we knew we had a movie. And at the same time, I thought, you know what, my biggest pet peeve on science fiction movies were the weapons. They never look real to me. So knowing the budget was so tiny, I couldn't make anything. I couldn't, there was no time to make anything. I thought, right, I'll just rent guns, because to me, like the Sterling submachine gun, it's a science fiction weapon to me. And so I didn't tell George or Gary or John Barry. I went to the gun hire place and made a Sterling into a blaster, stuck T-strip around it, and found some of those night sights in a box in the gun hire facility. And I stuck them all on the top at that stage with super glue. And I made the Mauser, which I loved when I saw it. I thought, wow, that's a space cowboy's weapon, and added on the top and added a kind of flash hider on the barrel. And I called literally John Barry and George over to have a look, because that was the point where I'd be fired, or I was on the right track. And the huge advantage, they could fire. They were real guns. I put on a single shot cartridge for the Sterling. You got a flash out of it, a bang. And George just smiled. He was so happy, and he stayed with me and made Princess Leia's gun with me. The two of us made it. And that was it. I was off to the races then.
That's history right there. Because the
Yeah.
gun you're talking about before was also the Stormtroopers and Han Solo. Like, wow.
Yeah, and I found, he changed the script because Ralph McQuarrie had drawn Chewbacca with a blaster, but I found that bowcaster with the balls on the end, and I thought, wow, this is just so much better. So I added another Skypes on the top, and George liked it. That script changed with that, and he got that. And I did all the weapons like that, everything.
What was George like to work with?
Well, I was a big fan of THX 1138. And so he made a science fiction film on the streets of LA, and with very little money. So he understood, and his script I loved when I read it. I thought, finally, I've got something that I could be really proud of. This is something right up my alley from childhood. I wanted movies to be like this. George's talent, he would always hire people who had only a limited experience, not enough that they would turn to him and say, no, Gov, you can't do that. This is how it's always done. And he hired people and he says it himself, I just knew they'd figure a way out to do it. It was the same with special effects, with John Barry, with me, with everybody. He honestly, you have to think at that time I was driving around London and I thought I can't build these sets. I just can't do it. I had so little money. So I thought, you know what? If I got airplane junk, which nobody wanted, I could fill the sets with it, make it look like a submarine or a B-52 bomber. I had to go and stand there before them and said, I've got this idea. Because George, I think, had done it, he said, just go and do it. So I did. I went bought mountains of airplane junk that nobody wanted at the time. It was so cheap. I could buy Rolls-Royce engines for jet engines and half a plane. I got truckloads coming into the studios. It saved my bacon because I was able to come in under budget. John Barry as well, you know, reading, well, this Tatooine, we can't afford to make anything. We can't afford to do this, but he designed Little Prince. So he said to George, if I take you to Tunisia, it looks like an alien planet to me. And then basically all he had to do was add a few more domes on the top of the buildings. And we had to build the sandcrawler and the crashed spaceship outside the cantina, add a little bit on there and add the top of Luke's homestead. Very little had to be done. I just had to dress it to make it all look like a kind of used Star Wars science fiction world. With a lot of the aircraft junk that I got, I took down and dressed things with.
Is
And
it,
so it's, you know, it came out of nothing.
it's brilliantly done. Is that how you did the Millennium Falcon too? It's like the old aircraft stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That the first set we built, and I was kind of crossing my fingers to be honest, because I'd said this would work. I didn't know it would work. And with the cockpit, John Barry had hired Harry Lang, who was one of the art directors on 2001. And Harry was kind of doing it beautifully like 2001. And, you know, there's me as this young squirt kid used to keep coming into him saying, Harry, I'm going to mess this up. And he finally handed over to me and watched me with one eye all the time. And I put in old fighter pilot seats and I put stuff around it. And this, it called George down to see, because again, this was another test. Was this okay? You know, George loved it. Um, and the Millennium Falcon, the big bridge, the whole set where the chess game is, that I started piling in. And I had to teach the prop boys. I mean, this is new. They used to hang in curtains, you know, putting up furniture and stuff. I had to teach them how to break down jet engines, how to break down airplane junk and undercarriages, put it into shelves where there's two or three of everything, because that's how submarines and airplanes are, and teach them how to layer it so it looked engineered, not like random. I've seen people just stick stuff on walls. It looks terrible. But even doing that, it looked terrible. I was just praying no one would go on the set and think that I really was mad. But right at the end, when we just finally put in the finishing touches, I could see people walk onto the set and their eyes open. They were just amazed that there was a ship looking like something we'd gone and hired, like a spaceship. So it was a gamble, but it worked. And we did the same with the outside. And by then, the draftsmen, who were the classic ones, you know, the same, you do drawings and you do this and that, and it's all like a factory process. By then, we're starting to go down into my junk piles, of which I had masses of it, and take pieces and draw them into the sets. So it was a kind of whole new learning experience for everyone. John Barry understood it immediately. He actually drew up the cantina with bits of my airplane junk, and then they anodized them into gold, and then they used all my drain piping and water piping and put that around on top of the bar. It was kind of done like that, you know. It was really, there was nothing to look at. There was no reference. We had nothing to say this is what it should be like. It was literally believe it would work and do it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we had a director who just smiled and loved everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I read somewhere. Did you make the first lightsaber?
Yes, that one. Um, what I did was I got my buyer to buy me junk cameras, anything that was old and been thrown out. I got calculators, anything that he could find, he would bring in, and I would strip stuff down. And my room was like I was like a magpie. Anything I liked the shape of, I wouldn't say, "Oh, that's going to be this." It was just that's a cool shape. I could use that. I got so much junk. I moved to the next room, literally. The and I was able to cobble together Luke's binoculars, and all this time the pressure was on because we were shooting in Tunisia first, and everything had to go on trucks across 5 countries to get there, and a boat from Genoa. Um, so there was pressure on all the time. And so I thought, you know what, I'll make Luke's binoculars. That I've got two different camera parts and a still camera part, and I literally super glued them together and thought, yeah, that's going to be it. And then I thought, you know what? So the audience understands what this is. I'll put two lenses on the front. So I went to Brunnings, where we got all our camera gear. We either rented or bought stuff from in London, and got two lenses cheaply that I could stick on the front. And I happened to ask David French, the manager at the time. I said, "Listen, there's something eluding me. I got to make a weapon. Do you have anything here that might work?" And he suggested torches. Well, the only reference I had in Ralph McQuarrie's painting was one in Darth Vader's hand, because the Darth Vader and the stormtroopers had lightsabers then. Well, actually, they were called laser swords in the script. And it looked like a torch, and the special effects boys had made some torches up, and they got rejected immediately by George. They looked like bland. And he pointed me to some boxes under a shelf and said, "Go and have a dig around." Well, the first box I opened, there were these Graflex handles that were the battery for a very famous press camera that he hired out that was used in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And I just thought, there it is. See, having read the script, and my favorite kind of legend was King Arthur. So I knew when you think about King Arthur, you think Excalibur, it's the sword that is the magic. And I thought, wow, if the Jedi's laser sword will become the icon of this Star Wars if it can work, you know. And I thought, here it is. I raced back to my office and I got some of the T-strip left over. I stuck round the blaster, and I thought, right, I'll put that round, make a handle. And I'd broken down a Texas instrument calculator in the morning. I unscrewed things. I only had a screwdriver and a pair of pliers and some super glue. I only had that in my office. And I found the bubble strip, and the only thing I wasn't keen on was the clip that clipped it onto the camera. So I stuck that in there, and it looked like, wow, this is a power, something where the forces goes through. And called George over, and I said, "I think I found the lightsaber, George." And that was it. He smiled, held it. It was heavy, and that is where it all came from. Um, he asked me um, to put a D-ring on the end because it was going to hang on Luke's belt in the desert. We weren't. That's the first time we'd see it on film. That we were filming it, rather. And I didn't have anything sophisticated enough to put that on. So I had an assistant, Roger Shaw, who was a new hiring, and he had no money either in his department. He just had toolboxes at home, and he found some D-rings and stuck those on the end. And there was a lot of discussions in my office. We used to have tea in my office at 7 in the morning because there was no time to talk in the day. And that was the designer and me and John Barry and Norman Reynolds. And I suggested that because the conversation about how do this light blade, I suggested painting sticks with front projection paint because I'd done it for art installations. And we had a big meeting with the special effects who Gil Taylor, the director of photography, immediately said, "No, you're not doing that. That'll spoil my lighting on the set and everything." And I looked at George. He said, "Do it." And so we did it. And the special effects boys put a little tight. They drilled out my. I've made a second handle for them. They drilled it out, put a little motor in there, which they put very tiny bit off center. It vibrated. And blow me, it kind of gave a glow on the set. Um, and the sticks themselves, because the only lightsaber fight is with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The decision was made, these blades should never go through each other. They should hit. Otherwise, I just wouldn't have looked real. So they were able, rehearsing, they broke so many sticks. I mean, they were long and thin, but they were able to crash against each other and everything. But that was the origins of what's become, I'm told now, the most iconic prop in the world of
Yeah.
anything, which I made for $15. I would get.
That's so cool. You see people, yeah, making them, designing them, selling them for, yeah, crazy prices now. And that's amazing to think it all came from you as well.
Well, it's interesting because now, in the last year and a half, lightsabers now, I mean, they're incredible. And I've teamed up with Theory Sabers, who make the best. He's the biggest YouTuber for Star Wars, Nia, and his lightsabers are amazing. And my son's got three of them. I mean, now you can turn them on. The blade can fire up, go down. It can make flames. It can do whatever you want it to do. The sounds are what Ben Burt did, and their blades are so strong you can smash into each other. You can fight. This was something we only couldn't even dream about when we made the first one. And I had to make Obi-Wan Kenobi's. That was done from a piece of one of my jet engines, that came out of a Derwent engine. There's a piece of that in there. And then we found a rifle grenade that it's an unusual grenade. You could fire from a rifle. It had a stick on it, and then the grenade on the end. That's the barrel on those. And a tap. We found a faucet that we thought that looks cool on the end, and we stuck that on the end.
That's so cool. You would never think that. It's so cool.
It's very funny. I mean, when I wrote the book, I never knew anything of what I'd done or where it came from. I just like shapes. I like this. My instinct told me this will work, that'll do this, this will make that. Now the fans have searched anally every single thing that I've done to recreate them possibly. So I was able to research what I'd used afterwards. And 2 weekends ago, I was at an opening in Louisville of a museum that David West Reynolds, who wrote the early books on all my props and sets and Star Wars, the Star Wars dictionaries. He had an Obi-Wan Kenobi lightsaber there. So I said, okay, what have you got on the end of it? Is it hot or cold? Because it's a tap. And he said, oh, I'm not sure. He actually had a cold on the end. So I said, it's come to me recently that this whole question, was it hot or cold? Because the fans then get anal about, oh, that's not right, and all this stuff. I went back and looked at the film, and I'd taken that cap off. And the first image you see when he's holding it, Obi-Wan, it's got an open end, which looked much better to me than the cap. So I finally answered all these people now, all the fans who are arguing over it's hot or cold and what's real and everything. So all these years later, now that one's been solved.
Yeah. is that how does it feel that you've had such this impact on so many people?
I'm very, I'm very, George, there's a Christopher Nolan, George Lucas YouTube interview you can watch now. And George doesn't say much, as you know, but he's talking there, and then he said, Christopher, making Star Wars, there were only 5 people stood by my side to make that film. And he said that was the art department, that I was one of those. And he's told me to my face afterwards that I was with John Barry and Les Dilly. We were the only ones who stuck right by him. The rest of the crew didn't believe in it at all. They thought it was an American pile of rubbish, and science fiction was really undervalued in those days. So, we became friends with George. I mean, serious friends, not just work. We were 4 months in a tiny studio together watching movies like Silent Running and Once Upon a Time in the West, and talking. And then with him commissioning Black Angel, and then he asked me to direct second unit on Return of the Jedi. And then when it came to Phantom Menace, which was a massive film, he only had 12 weeks to shoot it, because he finances all himself. They divided the film in two. I had one crew, he had the other crew. We shot side by side that whole movie. I have a relationship, obviously, with George, but what I think is important is, and I understood the mythology as soon as I've read it, and I've delved a lot in the book onto it, and I'm doing another book now, going even much deeper into all of that. You see, and I recognize that George created a perfect myth which had never been done before. Like King Arthur, Arthur failed. He didn't become the true hero. Actually, Mad Max, he took from Joseph Campbell's book, and he succeeded at the end because he found the children and led them to the promised land. So he fulfilled the hero's journey. And I realized he connected to everybody on the planet, doesn't matter, female, male, whatever else you want to call them, and children, because he makes his film for 9 years old.
Yeah.
He gave the world something to believe in. Whether they understood it or not, they subconsciously understood it. I think this is very, very important, and I read to my kids. I've got another 10-year-old now, and I value the parential child kind of conversations and links. And George has given the world a bridge between children and adults, which is really difficult. When I grew up, there was nothing.
Yeah.
Children were seen and not heard. In my family, I was not spoken to. And this came about because I'm always interviewed here on global television. It was the anchor there was a friend, and the main news channel. Whenever something happens with Star Wars, she had me on, and we were talking one day, and she said, I was watching. It would have been The Rise of Skywalker with her 10-year-old, and she said, I flashed back to me sitting as a 10-year-old with my dad in the cinema. So he's, religions, it's all the same story when Joseph Campbell is right, when you look at it, but they're not able to connect very well now to young people. George has done that, and he didn't make a religion. It's just a mythology. So I'm out now. In the last 2 years, I've kind of come out because the book didn't get promoted by the publishers at all. And I get 5 out of 5 reviews. Everybody tells me how much impact it had and everything and what I did in my life. So I said, enough. So I now go to conventions. I'm going around and I'm meeting people, and everybody has a story. It's touched so many people's lives. So I value hugely my place in it, and in a way my own hero's journey, because I stuck by George's side when very few believed in him or his vision. And I wanted to explain, because nowadays, the fourth generation, they're just huge Hollywood movies they're seeing. They're not. It started with a group of kind of cinema revolutionaries with no money, scrabbling about in scrapyards trying to make it work. So I'd like to tell these stories to inspire people. And it doesn't matter if you're going into accountant, if you're loving figures and knowing what you're doing, if you connect to that journey that's there for you, then you'll find, as Joseph Campbell says, you'll find your bliss. So I'm there very supportive. I just think it's this world is pretty much in crisis at the moment.
Yeah,
It's all around. I don't know how
definitely.
you are in Australia. You might be more stable than we are. When I
Yeah,
look at Europe and America and everywhere, and even Canada is going through it, it's
yeah.
needed, you know?
I live in a little small town, so it's like, yeah, it's good for me, I think.
Yeah.
But
I was
it's
there in 84, 85. It was very
yeah,
different then in Australia, very different.
yeah. Well, it's funny you're talking about, before the impact, between kids. I remember my uncle took me to see a New Hope in the cinemas when I was like, I don't know, 6 years old or something. And then today I was taking my son to buy Star Wars Lego.
Right. Yeah.
And I sort of just had
And
a moment and I was like, I'm talking to someone who designed, we're looking at the Millennium Falcon tonight,
yeah.
and my son was just like blown away by it.
Yeah, well then you'll get to build it with him. I do it.
Yeah,
That's my son didn't know what I did. I mean,
yeah,
Lego was a component that he and I would build together and do stuff.
yeah,
Now, of course, he's like understood what's going on. He's got so many lightsabers
yeah,
and stuff. So, but it's you know it's very needed. It's very valuable, and that's why we're here, really. And that
yeah,
the children are our teachers. You can learn so much from them if you're open to it.
yeah,
So that's why I'm so supportive, and I'm so happy to do this and try. There were nothing left in the archives of interviews that John Barry and I had done when they wrote the books.
yeah,
Nobody knew who made everything on Star Wars. There was
yeah,
never records of it. So I was kind of forced to write the book as a legacy to, because this film in 1,000 years will be in universities, it'll be, people will be studying every aspect of it. Well, it's like trying to puzzle out how did they build the pyramids?
yeah.
It was the same situation with Star Wars. So that's why I kind of wrote it.
I definitely remember when I was a kid, I was at the library and I'd try and get everything on Star Wars. And there was a book like how they were making things in the movie, they're driving buggies or something on the Death Star.
Yeah.
And I remember you're probably in that book, and now I'm talking to you.
Right.
And I just, it's just, yeah, blowing my mind. It's really cool. But
Yeah.
did you ever get to meet Tarantino? That's,
Yes.
that's the one
Yeah,
question I
that's
had.
when I found this out. Yeah, no, he was John Travolta introduced me to him because he thought I knew him, and I said I don't. And he actually said, "Well, um, he's going to go on the jet from New York on my jet back to LA. I'll put you on the jet." So I'm sitting with Tarantino. So he was acting out scenes from The Sender for me because he loved this film so much, and then he let me read the first few pages of Kill Bill to tell him what I thought of it. All handwritten out. He was writing it, and it kind of was an eye opener to me. How much influence kind of the sender had, and also obviously Star Wars. He told me that at the time he saw the sender, he was working in the video store. He wasn't the filmmaker, and that he'd recorded it off television. And he said, every night in the cinemas, he was so upset that they were not behind it, Paramount. He took people every night to the cinema to see it again and again and again. And then when the video store he was working in got the copy to rent out, they'd cut my film on his own money, being a video operator in the store. He went and cut back in the scenes that were taken out that he'd recorded on television. So he still got that tape. He said one day if I ever saw him, he'd give it to me. But yeah,
That's
so
cool.
yeah, so it was pretty. It was a very interesting meeting for me, meeting with him.
I'd love to see you two work on something together.
Yeah,
That would be cool.
yeah. Yeah, he's changed cinema as well.
Yes. I love
Changed the
the
world a
actors he
bit.
works with too, like Michael
Yeah,
Madsen,
yeah,
uh, all those guys. He makes some great films.
yeah, yeah. And it changed cinema. He's another one who just went out and made, a very different movies that connected to a young audience.
Yeah. I seen a trailer too for a documentary coming. It's A Galaxy is Built on Hope, that one.
Yeah, so that came about because of the film, and then everyone said you've got to tell these stories in your own voice because I do it. If I'm in universities or we do Q&As at each of these shows I go to and everything, and it was funny, and it was very hard to get finance for. Um, we managed to get a split between a company here who I'm working with that I met, and an American. I was going to go around and interview people. I was going to interview George Miller, and so there was Australia and UK and Los Angeles. I was going to go over, and then COVID struck,
Um,
and we were landlocked here in Canada. We couldn't get in or out for like 2 years, um, and so I found again. I just dogged spirit. I found an interactive studio that were virtual studio. I found that in London, in Toronto, and they made children's films, so we adapted it. And the thing is, I then got Paul Bateman is a science fiction artist who liaised a lot with Ralph McQuarrie, and in fact ended up building his website for him and going around doing his books. He got everything done the right color because he said it was all rubbish. What George that was going out, Ralph would never bothered with it. He was so upset because he's one of the heroes of every science fiction artist. Um, so Paul painted using game engine technology, painted sets for me in like 48 layers. So he created the cantina, the one that Ralph had designed, which we couldn't use. John Barry had to redesign it because it didn't work for the story. He painted both of those so I could be in it and they could link the interviewer in. And then he painted me the Millennium Falcon in a desert. And then Paul in London, through an interactive studio in London, they beamed him in and we had a monitor. So we were talking together on the monitor,
yeah.
and that was being comped in as we were shooting and stuff. So I was able, because I couldn't get any clips from the film. They wanted more money than my budget for the whole thing. And also, I realized when I looked at them, that, like the lightsaber, if you look at the scene when he gives it to him, Obi-Wan gives it to Luke, it's never pointed out. He just picks out a box, gives it to him, he fires it up. George
Yeah.
never went, oh, here's a lightsaber, look at this and everything. It was just part of a documentary like. So I figured I should do this as a legacy. That's what everyone has told me. So then Guillermo del Toro, who huge fan of the sender and everything I'd met, he's wanted to be in it, and he's very erudite. He goes throughout the whole documentary
Yeah.
talking about how Star Wars he saw as a young kid and went around the block 4 times and saw it again and again, and it inspired him as a filmmaker. And Gareth Edwards, who made Rogue One, which to me is the closest of a Star Wars sequel to the original. Gareth, I had given him interview questions and all sorts of stuff. So he recorded segments that go right throughout, and he's very erudite, especially as he was making Rogue One. I have Carl Newman, who directed Fanboys, in there,
Yeah, that's
all
a
these
good.
people. Yeah, so they're all, talking about what I did and what we did on Star Wars and the influence of it. I animated sequences because I couldn't get clips. And I thought, the clips don't express what I'm talking about. So I animated how it worked with, a spaceship in a garage and being repaired. And I animated like a Robin Hood sequence from the old Errol Flynn, Douglas Fairbank movies. things like that. I put in a Kurosawa. I made my own version of a sword fight from a Kurosawa movie and put
Yeah.
in the wind blowing the grass and stuff like this in black and white. Of course, I had Excalibur and the sword rising out of the lake. So I was able to illustrate through animation and music the points that I was making. So I've that was done as a 2 hour 20 fan special, and then I split it up the original intention into 6 episodes, and it's now with our American producer and who trying to wait for him to get it out and get it sold somewhere. So I'm on the road now. I'm building up my kind of credibility and awareness because I'd never done it. I'd always kept quiet, but I realized I've got to now go out on the road. And so eventually I'll get enough going to get that out because people who've seen it just really like it a lot. And as they've all said, this is the history of Star Wars.
Yeah,
So it's there, it'll get out. So I'm just waiting for it to come out now.
definitely. Yeah, it's got that story has to come out. That'll be
Yeah, I
amazing.
think
I love the
so.
trailer.
I interviewed the original carpenter who built R2D2. He lives here in Toronto, Bill. So I interviewed him, and he's got the toolbox that he made Star Wars out of with the
Wow.
sticker, the little corner triangular sticker still on the toolbox. And as he said, everything on Star Wars was made out of this little box. That's all we had to start with. And I interviewed David French, who's the manager of Brunnings, where I found the lightsaber and the Graphics handle. I got him on because a lot of anal fans have all told me there was only one lightsaber and it's not true and there were more and all of this goes on. So we
Yeah.
asked him, David, after Roger had found the three in the box and he took those, what happened? And he says, I got a call saying, do you have any more? And I said, yes, I do, because he rented out. He had a whole huge amount. And he said, how many do you want? They said, well, how many would you let us have? And he said, well, I could let you have 30. So 30 Graflex handles went to us in Elstree in the production to be made into various lightsaber pieces and stuff. So there are lots of background ones, there are special effects ones, the ones people find and go, this is it. You see, this is how it was. It isn't.
Yeah.
I know what I did. I made the first one.
Yeah.
Um, And we asked him, well, how much did you get paid for all 33 Graflex handles? And he says, £850. He told me afterwards, I ruined his business now because you can't buy them. He can't get his stock up anymore because they're thousands of dollars each.
Yo. Oh, who would have thought that would be such
Yeah,
a huge impact then?
yeah. I'm
And
now doing it just now. Star Wars Theory Sabers and we're doing the Roger Christian Origin Saber. I'm doing the original one as a working saber. They've just sent me all of the designs from the company doing it, and as Nia says, it's going to be like probably one of the most prized possessions because this is the origin of it all. So that'll come out. He wants it out as soon as possible, so it will come out, and so everyone can have the original Luke's but working.
yeah, that is
Uh,
going to be a huge seller.
Christmas,
Yes,
yeah, it'll be a
everyone will be getting
Christmas.
their hands on that.
Yeah, that's what he was saying, and then and I thought we should do it. It's like it's for kids really.
Yeah,
It's and if I could make enough money to get my next book published, self-published by doing it, and
yeah,
get the sequel written to my Black Angel film. The first title is called The Sword of Tyrus. It's three sections of like Star Wars. Movie one is it's part of a Black Angel saga.
yeah.
So and then I can then use that to write the second one and then get that made in the same way. So it's a way to to carry on, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, I think yeah, for sure it'll work. I love the helmet he's got on in Black Angel too. He's got like the snake.
Yeah. Well, the
Everything on that
snake,
was,
yeah, see, Gilgamesh, I studied, we were years trying to make the Epic of Gilgamesh for a producer. We never got it made, but I did a huge study of that ancient epic
yep.
and Adam and Eve, all of these going back. So the snake is the only creature that represents, if you like, the idea of, I don't know what you would call it, the when you're coming back as a
Like
resurrection,
reincarnation, resurrection.
reincarnation. Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess let's call it reincarnation. So the
yeah,
snake represents that. That's why I put it on his helmet.
yeah,
It got
yeah.
that got picked up. Some of the talks I've done, some people went up saying, "Did you
That's
put
cool.
that in there because of mythology? Because it." And I said, "Yes, I did. It was on purpose."
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I missed that. But it looks so cool though. Yeah, everything on that film, I loved it.
So
So
that's a symbol in Black Angel that ties through. When I make the film, The Sword of Tyrus, I have a sorcerer Mardin in it. On the flag of the Somatics, I still have Somatics as the lead, and the his father was a king, and the father's emblem was a staff with the snakes, twin snakes wrapped round it, two snakes. So that will be seen in the film on his breastplate and in the armor. So I kind of there's Easter egg kind of follow throughs, you know?
yeah, that's cool. I love all that stuff too. You're saying like the King Arthur stories and
Yeah,
like this sort of theme. I really like it, like samurais
yeah,
and it's awesome
yeah.
because my two boys are into that now as well. So it's awesome.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, they're obsessed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the best. I tell every student, I tell them, stop watching all these new movies. Go and watch every
Yeah,
movie that Kurosawa made, then watch every movie that Sergio Leone made, and every story that he did, every Clint Eastwood movie is basically a samurai movie that was he just adapted.
yeah,
And then go and watch the classic cinema. And it's not to go back. And I'm pushing forwards. I mean, when I was directing Second Unit on Phantom Menace, George had commissioned Sony to make digital cameras, and the first two arrived. Everyone was against them. No, film, this is the way and everything. And I was standing by George and said, no, as a director, every producer standing behind you saying, why are you doing four takes? You know how much film costs? I knew the change. It was so obvious it had to come.
yeah,
And everybody makes it look like film anyway. So what's the difference? So I think that the value though in storytelling, and we all love, I take my 10-year-old out, he was with me all last summer. My wife was away. I went every night to watch every blockbuster, Fast and Furious, all the Marvels, the DCs, everything every week. And
yeah,
Americans do them better than anybody else. They're huge, sound, visions, everything,
yeah,
but they don't stay with you like Star Wars did.
yeah,
Um, and when you watch Seven Samurai, you watch Yojimbo Sanjuro, you watch those movies, they stay
yeah. They have
with
a
you. And
lasting effect.
yeah, it's very important. It's good for them. Are they going to go in the industry? You know what they're going to do?
Yeah.
Your kids?
I don't know. They talk about it like they want to. Like, yeah, make stuff like Star Wars, and they're always building things. But yeah,
Yeah,
I hope so. I'd support them whatever
yeah,
they want to do.
yeah. There you go. It's it's the influence is far and wide. You can go to China, there'll be a
Yeah,
doll, Star Wars doll in a village, and it never really got
yeah,
ignited there. But
yeah,
even so, Star Wars is still the idea of it. Even in India, it
yeah.
never took off there, Star Wars, but now it has.
Well, my oldest son, he last year he from Japan, he just bought a samurai Darth Vader.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like a Darth Vader with the samurai armor, and it's yeah,
It's beautiful. Well, here's a
yeah,
story for him. When I was in the gun hire place making the pistols and the blasters, I found in there they had a full samurai costume from a real one, and it was all in black. and I took the helmet back into Lee Studios to look at with George, and because the patina of it was so beautiful. I mean, this is from what, 17th, 18th century, but the way the black was and everything, and that became the kind of reference for Darth Vader, because we had a sculptress in Lee Studios with us. She was the only other person we'd hired, and she was making the stormtroopers' helmets, and she was doing a rough mock-up of Darth Vader as well.
So he'll be yeah over the moon because he loves both. He's got Star Wars and Samurai.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's his
well,
two. Both the
yeah,
boys. That's what they love.
yeah. I haven't shown yet my son yet, but I'm waiting to show him. He hasn't
Yeah,
seen the samurai movies. He's got
yeah,
through Star Wars now, and I showed him Alien the other night, and he was okay.
yeah.
He's 10 years old, but
Yeah, that's a cool movie. I
my,
remember I
my
was about the same.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's scary, but it's okay scary.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there. I remember, yeah, watching it with my dad. What was Del Toro like? I've been a big fan of his as well.
He's a wonderful human being. I mean, it's just his hugs that he gives everybody are worth years of friendship. And he again has changed cinema. His passion for what he's doing, the storytelling, everything. And I think that, he's a genius. He's another one who just saw a film called Star Wars, and it ignited something inside him. He became part of a force from Mexico that kind of came out and made movies that, again, his impact when you watch them, they're beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
Everything he makes that really, and I keep telling him, you've got to keep going, Guillermo, because you are the one true artist of cinema working today. You're the one true one. That's what I keep telling
He's
him.
amazing. I'm a huge fan of him as well. He's had a big impact on
Yeah.
me as well. So that's awesome. Got to keep him going.
Yeah, they're non-ego like George. They just get on and work and they do their jobs, and there's none of this other nonsense that goes around this whole industry. And he kind of, in his own way, is independent. So
Yeah.
he struggles like all of us to get films made.
Yeah.
But championing Pinocchio and getting it done, I think, is a massive achievement. And
Oh,
what he's done for
yeah.
the animation, the stop motion industry is revived a craft.
Phenomenal. Well, three books that have influenced you in your life.
I would say certainly Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell's. I think it contains everything that I'd ever thought, and I studied Jung and I studied so many different people. And I think that was one that I kept diving back into and watching. Another one that would be obscure for everybody else, but it's called Eating Alive, and it's by Dr. Matson in Vancouver, and it's on he 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 was the world expert on candida and yeast overgrowth and the digestive systems, and he found that every cancer patient he treated had a yeast overinfection, and it came from the stomach, and he wrote this book. It's like a plumbing system and with childlike animation in it. And I give it to everybody because it really, really kind of influenced everybody, because we are our digestive system. Everything we have, everything wrong with us comes from the stomach. And I deal with it with my son now, and allergies with my elder son and stuff. And this book has been a life changer for me. Um, so that was pretty influential to me. It's an
Yeah.
obscure one, but it's
I'll get that book.
it's so simple and it's life changing. I guess King Arthur really, they're difficult to tell apart from Dune, which I just read so many times, Dune, and Tolkien I read so many times, and Arthur Miller's 2001 and William Gibson's Necromancer. I mean, these books, uh, the ones I love, I just read everything was Ray Bradbury. I loved Ray Bradbury. I think he was one of the great sci-fi writers who put everything into content and context for a 18, 25-year-old growing up. Something Wicked This Way Comes. They're just wonderful reading. So there's those as well. I mean, there's so many. I had books shelves piled with them.
Yeah, yeah, I love my reading as well.
Jack Kerouac's On the Road. I mean, I read that I don't know how many times. Like this was the breakthrough for us.
Okay, someone comes to you and they say they want to get into filmmaking. What's three movies I need to watch? What three movies would you tell someone to go and watch?
Dr. Zhivago,
Yep.
because it's one of the greatest love stories ever told. It takes on the entire Russian Revolution from the one side to the other. And I think that encompasses so much. Kurosawa's, I love Throne of Blood, which was basically the retelling of Macbeth, probably would be the first one, along with Seven Samurai. Those have really kind of had a big influence for me, certainly, as almost perfect movies to watch. And a third one, I would recommend everyone watch A New Hope Star Wars because
Yeah.
I think it encompasses everything. But if I'm
Yes.
not allowed that one, then
No, I was hoping you would say that as
yeah,
well. That's that's something I always recommend people to.
yeah,
You got to see this.
yeah. Just watch it because it's
Yeah.
all in there. There's the whole saga, the
It's got
whole hero's
everything.
journey. Everything is in that first movie. It's fun. It's got friendship. It's got winning, light over darkness, everything, and it encompasses everything that we all believe in and talk about.
That's another question I always ask. Because like I like writing, so I'll write like short stories and stuff just for myself. But what advice would you give to someone who wants to either get into writing or it doesn't have to be writing film, anything?
I know for me, I mean, I've worked on scripts all my life, and I've had to rewrite and do all of this stuff. And then I wrote Black Angel, which the key is to find something that you believe in so deeply inside yourself, and then try and put that up, and then just write. You don't have to have a blank piece of paper and start. The sun rises. Doesn't matter. If you have an idea for a scene or something, just write it down and then put another one. And it's so much easier now with computers because you can cut and paste. Stick stuff down. Doesn't matter. And the most important change and influence in my life, apart from, working on Star Wars, is doing the Silver method, which is Jose Silva was a Texan who founded the Silva method, and it's a long story. I won't go into it now, but he discovered that the most receptive part of the brain, time when the brain is most receptive and most creative, is in the alpha stage, which is right before you're going to sleep and right when you're waking up. Your brain is in a different mode. So he has a technique whereby you're going to bed and you're thinking of something, and I can't make this work. You drink half a glass of water and go to sleep. And when you wake up in the morning, you drink the other half and you'll get the answer. And it happens to me all the time. It may come a few days later, it may come straight up. Your brain, which is linked to your heart and your instinct, you have to learn to trust it. It's the hardest thing because the stupid mind is always going, no, don't do that. Oh, you shouldn't do that. No, you can't do that. Oh, no, you can't go into film. What are you talking about? Get a proper job. No, 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 don't write that. Oh, everyone's going to laugh at you. This is a constant bloody chatter that the Silver method taught me through meditation to silence. And so it's important to, the head, we're like headless chickens. We should be cut the head off and then let the instinct rise and follow that. And in the end, sometimes it'll take writing 10 books to find your voice. Sometimes people find it at the end of their lives. It doesn't matter. You just keep doing it. Most writers tell you they've written so many stories. There's a few geniuses on the planet. It just pours out of them. It's, as I tell everyone, if you need determination more than anything else. And if you actually happen to have some talent, that's a bonus.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah. I want to ask what the next 12 months has in store for you. What can we
Well,
see?
I'm we will be this year. I'll be making the Sword of Taurus, the first of the my Black Angel saga. Now I know that now. Finally, I can actually say it. I could see from the conversation and what I'm witnessing that I think I could safely say we're going to make that as soon as that literally the funds drop into the bank. Then I have to go and do that. That'll be done this year, and then that'll be editing into next year, and I'll get that ready, prepared. I'll be launching, hopefully, in some point in July, the Roger Christian Origin Saber, which is going to take up all of my time. But that, alongside it, I'm doing because I think that's going to drive a lot in the future. And alongside that, then I have to then create kind of the websites and all of the stuff. And I'd like to do mentoring. I get so many people and talking to me and wanting to know and everything. And I've done it a few times of actors and other people, and they've paid a small amount of money, and they'll have 20 minutes to an hour of mentoring, even if it's on Zoom, and it's very impactful for them. I never had anyone like that until I made really Black Angel. George was my mentor, which was Kurosawa, basically. Um, and feeling so disillusioned with the sender when it was being so criticized, and it opened this huge Avoriaz festival. That's the biggest festival for fantasy, science fiction, and horror films in the world at the time. And that's where George Miller was the head of the jury. I mean, George really helped me. We got to know each other pretty well. I haven't seen him for many, huge number of years, as it goes like that. But at the time, and he was in London working here, and he was at the house, and we were talking all the time. And he's a fantastic, quiet mentor who was building his way of making a filmmaker, from early that Mad Max. And I think we need mentors. Luke Skywalker had Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was his mentor. Yoda came along, but the Obi-Wan Kenobi is the mentor. King Arthur had Merlin. You go back to the Mahabharata, all of everything. There's always a mentor there. So I'd like to be able to kind of pursue all of that. And I've got the financiers here I'm working with, who did the documentary. I'm doing one other, which is more of a kind of give back to the planet, low budget thing. When I looked at my son's curriculum for social studies, the history of Canada started when Carter arrived in a boat. So the indigenous Indians have lived in this America and Canada, and they called it Turtle Island. It wasn't Canada. They named it Canada then when they came in. It's a massive history that is completely missing. So we're going to do a documentary. Its government's going to fund it, so it won't be high budget. But I'm not in it. I'm not part of it. I'm just making it, and it's only going to be indigenous people telling their story, because they never owned the land. They never owned the buffaloes. They never owned farms. They never owned the sky. They didn't own anything. They said the creator gave it to us and we respected it. And the way they lived is a silent lesson for everybody who talks about climate change and how we have to do things on this planet. Well, let these people of wisdom talk.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm also working on. That'll be called Turtle Island.
Wow, that'll be awesome as well. I'll look forward to that. I like that as well.
So that's my life for the next couple of years, I think.
Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see everything that's gonna come out. I'll definitely watch that too.
All right. Good.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah, I want it in
appreciate
every
you.
school. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got to get in every school and certainly here.
yeah. Everywhere on the planet will be good.
Yeah, it will. You can see
Yeah.
anime. Look at his. Can you see his
Yeah.
right behind the bed? That's a
Yeah.
huge. He loves Demon Slayer and
Yeah. Same as my kids that love anime.
yeah, yeah, huge fan. And I like it too, you see, as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, me too. So it's cool.
yeah.
I get to,
That's another film to watch, Necromance. The
yeah.
sorry, what's it called? What's it called? The Japanese animation, the first one, the big one they made.
Oh,
The name's escaping me.
I know which one you're talking about. I watched it when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
So yeah, Akira. The movie that everyone should watch is Akira.
Yeah. So it's with the red bike.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
One of the
know.
greatest of all those movies made.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a special place for anime. And yeah, I took my kids to Japan last year and
Oh,
that was incredible. They loved it.
I bet.
It's all they can talk about now is going back there.
I bet. Because the anime shops and everything there, they're just amazing. It's
Yeah.
beautiful there.
Yeah, it's
I know I
really
had
good.
a great time when I was there.
It's super clean there as well.
Oh, I continually ask them, what do you do? Why don't you have rubbish? What do you do with it? And they just kind of didn't know. And I said, but there's none in the streets. There's no, what do you do at home?
Yeah.
Everything, this house is full of rubbish all the time. So
Yeah. That
garbage outside, they don't have it.
I couldn't work it out. Yeah. It's a mystery.
Yeah, I know. There you go.
Um, yeah, I wanted to find out what's been the best experience for you so far in your career, like your happiest moment.
Working with George.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on all of them, even on the first one, just standing by him, I love, grim as it was, and no time and no sleep and no hours. I loved it. And that was the same experience on Jedi and on Phantom Menace. But being like alongside him on Phantom Menace was certainly an experience I won't ever forget. That was amazing. That movie itself, which I think finally now it's come out and being valued properly, and people are now liking it. And all these huge
Yeah.
disparaging people on it
Yeah.
just because they didn't like Jar Jar Binks or whatever. It's all rubbish, and they're now finally realizing what a huge and great movie this is.
Yeah. It's incredible.
So
I remember taking the day off school to go and see it.
yeah,
Like my parents,
just
yeah,
just watch that pod race. It's worth the price of an admission to a cinema. It's
yeah,
again, it's a game-changing movie.
yeah. And the lightsaber battles, I love that when they're fighting Darth Maul.
Yeah,
Everything about that movie was amazing.
I shot a lot of those fights.
Yeah,
I mean, that was pretty amazing for me. Yeah, I worked with Ewan and Darth Maul. I had to do a lot of those
yeah,
because it's like that's what second unit does. They'll do the main bits, George, and then I would fill in all the other stuff. I was working with Darth Maul in the desert,
yeah,
shooting that stuff out there. It was a huge. I think that was my favorite of all the experiences because there was none of this animosity that was on the first Star Wars from the crew.
yeah.
It was
I,
a
I, lo-
well-oiled.
I love yeah, Ewan McGregor and Ray Parks as well.
Yeah,
You said,
extraordinary. Ray Park's extraordinary. He's a ninth Dan stick artist, and
yeah,
he could do things the stuntmen couldn't do.
yeah, yeah, because he does all of his
Yeah,
own stuff as well. It's crazy.
yeah, they couldn't do it.
Yeah,
Some of the stuff I had him do, and the others couldn't do it. George got Ray up to the ranch to Skywalker later on in post, and had him put on the other costumes, the Jedi costumes, and he did the stunts for them. Some of the stuff.
wow. Do you still like ever go to the ranch and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah. I
now?
went. Yeah, last time I was up there, but that was when George just had the new child, his daughter, and
Yeah,
Lena was pregnant. So I had lunch with him, and he was digitizing actually then. It was some years ago. He was digitizing the six films to launch on digital. And of course, as soon as I digitized, he was showing me everything. Like gaffer tape was around Darth Vader's collar and the gold tape on C-3PO holding it together. I mean, everything. He had to go in and redo the entire six movies
Wow.
because it shows up. And then I was there after that, the last time, and that's when I had lunch with him. I went to see him was when they'd redone the whole picture for Black Angel. I went with the mixer at Skywalker, and we looked at the sound, and they're brilliant. He said, "Listen, I don't want to touch this. Bill Rowe is so famous, the one who originally mixed the film."
Yeah.
He said, "I just want to clean it up. That's all. We'll remove all the aging stuff and everything, but let's keep this mix. Don't change it."
Yeah.
So that's how we did it. They remixed the whole thing for me as a cleanup.
Definitely. That's pretty exciting. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so they're very respectful of what's there.
yeah. Yeah. Do you have any input with Star Wars today, or is it like
Nothing.
nothing? Yeah.
No, we're out of we're out of the loop, really, all of us, and it's a shame. I know Doug Chang wanted me as the advisor on the Rise of Skywalker, but we were blocked from having anything to do with them and Les Dilly.
Well,
Um, yeah,
because you would
it's
think they'd be asking you for yeah. I don't know.
yeah, that's just I don't want to get into it, but there you go.
Yeah.
That's the change of the way it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That
thank
works.
God for we bless Dave Filoni every day because he's brought back.
Yes.
He's been so reverent to what the canon is, to what was there, how we made everything, how everything was done. And it
Yeah.
came true for me at the end of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I was watching because he had to get the lightsaber.
Yeah.
And I was so anxiously waiting that episode because the set deck and the designer on Empire Strikes Back, John Barry had died of meningitis. I wasn't there. The set deck, who I know very well, is much better. He was not a science fiction, didn't know anything about it. So, I mean, as lazy, instead of just sticking the T-strips around the handle of my lightsaber, they stuck rivets through to hold it in,
Yeah.
which to me completely destroyed the mysticism. It gave a human element to it.
Yeah.
And this is a mystical weapon of the Jedi's. It shouldn't have had that. So that unfortunately went through the whole of Star Wars. So I was waiting to see what's he going to dig up, which one. If he follows Empire Strikes Back, then he'll do the one with the rivets. But Dave Filoni dug up my original.
Wow. That's pretty
So
cool.
God bless him. Yeah.
I feel like he's doing a good job.
Yeah, he's
He's
doing a great job, and whatever difficulties he goes through, he's trying his best. And the other person I became very good friends with is Doug Chang.
mm,
They did have me at the ranch when they were doing Clone Wars and
mhm.
doing the first of the new ones. They had me go and speak to his team of artists, and they documented it on film for like a couple of hours. I was telling them how we did everything and why and what.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
So
some like a lot of the Mandalorian. I've been watching that as well. That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
it's he revived the whole kind of Star Wars that we created in those early days
Yeah.
and brought the audience back. Look at it. They came flooding back with that film,
Yeah.
TV series. So
I love that he had the same actor who played Jar Jar Binks come back
yeah,
as a Jedi, at best.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I shot a lot of Ahmed Best stuff as well. I got to know
Yeah.
him very well, and I despaired at what he went through, but
Yeah. He's
he's
amazing.
finally,
I've been trying to
yeah,
get
he
him on
is.
here as well.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He's a really good person, very talented. So I'm
Yeah.
so happy to see his resurrection.
Yeah, it was cool. My son just got his Lego set of is his Jedi character with the clones.
Really?
Yeah, and Baby Grogu.
Uh,
And he doesn't want to open it because I don't know. He,
yeah,
he just loved that character.
That's good.
Yeah, it's really cool. What's been the hardest thing to design for you? Like the biggest challenge? Would that have been Star Wars?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we had no reference. There were six paintings of Ralph McQuarrie's. The rest, there was nothing to go on.
yeah,
You do a period film, you go and I go to art galleries and look at paintings. I've got books and reference everything. With a film like Star Wars, there's nothing before it, nothing. There was
mm,
nothing to go on apart from basic instinct and
yeah,
um, my own imagination
yeah. You're
and a desire.
starting from
Yeah,
scratch pretty much.
that's, yeah, and a desire to make a film that audiences would believe was real rather
Yeah,
than an artificial world that all these other sci-fi movies were before that.
yeah, definitely. Who's your favorite Jedi on
I I do like Obi-Wan Kenobi, I must
yeah.
say.
Yeah, he's cool. I love Obi-Wan. He'd have to be. I feel
Yeah.
like he's the most, yeah, purest one.
Yeah, he's the purest one. He's the Merlin.
Yeah,
I just think um, the way his spirit and the character is, that's what George wanted everyone to kind of look to
yeah.
as a Jedi.
It's like incorruptible. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you think, oh, we should have
No, I think,
covered?
no, we've covered a lot.
And I appreciate you coming on and your
Not at
time.
all.
And
Thank
I'll
you.
definitely keep in touch. And I'll
Yeah.
send you a link.
Yeah, send me the link and yeah, say hello to your sons.
Yeah, I will. They'll be
Tell them to
excited.
keep going. Yeah.
I will. Thanks very much.
Okay. Good to meet you.
Good to
Bye.
meet you. Bye.